Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to dive right into a really beautiful and actually highly rational premise found in Islamic theology. The core idea we're pulling from our source material today is this concept that the divine alone possesses absolute knowledge. And as you'll see, understanding this idea doesn't restrict us, it actually totally liberates the human mind. Let's jump in.
So, this brings us to the central invitation of our explainer. I want to ask you, who truly holds the keys to the future? The source material presents this foundational Islamic idea that absolute knowledge of what's yet to come belongs exclusively to the divine creator. It's really an invitation to consider that true peace of mind, well, it comes from trusting that the future is safely in the hands of an all-knowing God, rather than, us anxiously trying to unlock it ourselves.
To really grasp this, we need to understand a core term from the lecture, Tawhid, which translates simply as belief in God's absolute oneness. But here's the thing. It's not just about believing there's only one God. It's about a deeply focused, undivided reliance on that creator. The scholar explains that when we start assigning divine abilities, like, say, knowing our destiny or controlling tomorrow's outcome, to stars, lucky charms, or fortune tellers, it actually disrupts this beautiful, rational oneness. It kind of fractures our spiritual focus.
And that leads us straight to our next crucial definition from the text, Ghayb, meaning the unseen or unknown reality. The source argues that the true absolute future is Ghayb. It is entirely unseen to us. So logically, if a human being claims they can see the future, they're effectively claiming to have abilities equal to God. From a rational Islamic perspective, this is exactly why believers are asked to rely only on the Creator. Claiming to know the unseen is literally crossing a profound logical boundary.
Which brings us to a brilliant logical argument at the heart of the lecture. The scholar actually breaks down the concept of the unseen into two very distinct categories to prove his point. As we can see, we have the relative unseen and the absolute unseen. Let's break down exactly what this means, because honestly, this is where the logical proof really shines.
Okay, let's start with the relative unseen. This basically refers to information that's hidden from you, but not hidden from everyone. For instance, what's currently inside my pocket is unseen to you, right? But I know it. Or an event happening in another city right now, it's unseen to us here, but the people in that city are experiencing it in real time. The lecture points out that psychics or fortune tellers often exploit this specific gap. Through deception, hidden networks of info, or even what the text describes as unseen entities, they might magically guess a hidden fact about your past. It's almost like the ancient equivalent of someone secretly Googling you before a blind date. But here's the trick. That is just the relative unseen. They're accessing hidden facts to trick people into believing they have actual divine power.
So the absolutely crucial point here is how this contrasts with the absolute unseen. The absolute unseen involves things that literally no created being knows. When will a specific person's life end? When will the world end? What exact provisions or fortunes will tomorrow bring? The source makes a really calm academic point here. Knowing the absolute future is logically impossible for humans. Relying on anyone who claims to know it, well, that just leads us away from rational faith and straight into the trap of superstition.
So how does this actually play out in practical daily life? How does this theology categorize different practices? Well, the scholar provides a very structured breakdown. First, you have harmless illusions, like a magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat. The text notes this is basically just sleight of hand. Sure, it might be disliked if it genuinely deceives someone, but pulling a coin from behind a kid's ear is certainly not a severe spiritual crime. However, astrology and fortune-telling, those are firmly rejected because they cross that logical boundary we talked about, falsely claiming absolute divine knowledge. And finally, dark magic is strictly forbidden because it actively relies on unseen, harmful entities to cause damage to others. So you see, it's a very rational, organized way of looking at it. Now, this brings us to a topic pretty much everyone is familiar with, astrology. And the source provides a wonderfully grounded perspective here. It states that stars are magnificent, practical tools created by God. I mean, historically, they were essential for navigation. They guided our physical way across vast oceans and deserts. But linking the position of a distant star to your personal daily fortune or mood, according to the text, that's just an illogical superstition. The stars don't dictate your spiritual destiny, they're simply part of a beautifully ordered physical universe. All right, now we need to address the elephant in the room. When discussing belief and disbelief in Islam, there's often a really major misunderstanding. A curious observer might ask, wait, does this mean Islam harshly condemns innocent ignorance? If someone genuinely doesn't know the truth, are they punished? The source handles this with so much compassion and clarity. Let's take a quick moment to look at the actual linguistic roots of the words used to understand why. To really answer that, we have to look at the Arabic word kufr, which translates to covering or concealing the truth. The literal linguistic definition is super fascinating. It doesn't just mean not knowing. It actually implies taking a truth that you already clearly recognize deep in your heart and actively throwing a blanket over it. It's an intentional action of concealment, not just a state of innocent unawareness.
The lecture brilliantly outlines the human roots of this covering of truth. It illustrates that disbelief isn't just some single monolithic punishment for being born in the wrong place. Rather, it's a spectrum of deeply human reactions rooted in ego. Think about it. It includes arrogance. You know a truth, but refuse to humble yourself to it. It includes denial, looking right at clear evidence and calling it a lie. It involves active avoidance, literally plugging your ears and running away when someone tries to share the message. And finally, cynical doubt, refusing to commit even when the proofs are totally overwhelming. It's really a psychological state of stubbornness more than anything else.
So the absolutely crucial takeaway here, and the scholar explicitly notes this, is that an honest lack of knowledge is met with divine understanding. If someone is genuinely ignorant, if the message simply never reached them, or hey, if it reached them in a completely distorted way, they are excused. Divine judgment is based on what you did with the truth once you clearly recognized it, not on what you innocently never knew. This fundamentally shifts how we view the concept of ultimate justice in this theology.
And that naturally leads us right to the concept of sincerity. The source text draws a really sharp contrast between hypocrisy and true belief. Hypocrisy is described as this painful, fractured state where someone outwardly shows belief but inwardly conceals rejection, often just to fit in socially. It's an agonizing inner contradiction. True belief, on the other hand, is when your inner peace and conviction perfectly align with your outward actions. It's a state of absolute tranquil sincerity.
So let's move to our ultimate takeaway for a seeker. When you combine this sincere belief in one God with the understanding that the future is the absolute unseen, what's the actual result? Well, the lecture argues that the result is liberation, total liberation from the anxiety of omens. The speaker lays out a really practical, two-step daily benefit to this theology. Step 1, acknowledge that the absolute future is safely resting in God's hands. You don't have to carry the exhausting weight of trying to predict it. Step 2, walk forward with rational confidence. This means you can completely ignore irrational omens. You don't let a black hat crossing your path, an arbitrary number like 13, or some vague warning on a daily astrology app paralyze you with fear. You are totally insulated from superstition because your worldview is logically anchored in the Creator, not in random coincidences.
I want to leave you with this final, truly empowering thought derived directly from today's material. Place your trust solely in the one who knows the absolute unseen, and live free from the anxiety of superstitions. It's a profound summary of how rational monotheism seeks to quiet the anxious human mind. If the absolute future is safely managed by the divine, how much lighter would your daily steps be if you simply let go of the irrational fears trying to predict it? Gives you something to think about, doesn't it?